in North Africa with Dr. Brovkin. Today's session is devoted to the Golden Age and specifically to the age of Harun Rashid. But first, the background. As we all know, the Golden Age begins with the Abbasid dynasty, which starts at 754, which starts with the victory over the Umayyads, and Abu Abbas rules from 745 to 754. This is when he dies, and the actual great first caliph is Al-Mansur. So Al-Mansur is sort of the beginning of the Golden Age in the true sense, because this is the caliph who builds Baghdad. As we have discussed, he builds Baghdad in these concentric circles with the reason as the major guiding principle. Al-Mansur is the sponsor arts and literature and poetry and sciences. And he's what we would call a hands-on ruler, which means he is interested in every detail of what's going on. He basically takes care of everything: the administration, the taxes, the arts, the letters, the provinces, the religious affairs, pretty much everything. He establishes major patterns of government that would last for hundreds of years, even after the Abbasid dynasty. And this is called the system of viziers. As a matter of fact, the origin of this system is Persian, and this is why Durant, the author of the book The Age of Faith, has this sentence, which is the conquered conquer the victors, which means the Persians, who were the conquered, in a sense conquer the Arabs by promoting their culture, their government system, their ways of doing things, their architecture, their style of clothing and manners, and the palaces. In other words, the Persians had civilization for hundreds of years, for millennia. The Arabs were newcomers. They were wild nomads who conquered Persia, and now the argument is that they absorb the culture of the ones they have conquered, and they begin to build palaces and libraries and all this thing. And it's in Arabic, but it's also in Persian. But it's kind of as we discussed, it's the mixture of culture, it's the merger of cultures that produces this great melting pot of Baghdad. But in terms of politics, it's the viziers, and that's also a Persian tradition. The viziers are, in a modern sense, like prime minister. They have the power of the government. So we could think that the caliph is the head of state and the head of religion. He's the leader of the faithful, but the viziers are the actual prime. The first great viziers is Khalid, son of Barmak. So this is why his last name is pronounced as Barmakid. So Khalid Barmakid, a Persian, he is the friend and vizier of Al-Mansur. And that begins a kind of a dynasty, because Barmakids are going to continue with the next generation also being as very powerful viziers. So we could say that the Golden Age, in a way, we understand it as the place where, yes, he has two sons, Al-Mahdi, who rules from 775 to 785, 10 years. And he continues the job of his father, of Al-Mansur. Pretty much everything goes on. There's no change. He supports music and literature, and he supports good and efficient government and collection of taxes. And essentially, he goes on with the same policies, with the same efficiency, and with the same ideas, Al-Mahdi. But then comes a little interesting moment when he has two sons. And that will again generate a problem that's going to be serious for many, many decades to come. And that is what to do if you have two sons. Who is going to inherit the throne? Well, there is no rule like in Europe that the older brother necessarily does that. It's really the pick of the father. So the ruling caliph can say who is going to be, and they have to come to an agreement. But as we shall see, they never honor these agreements, and there will be always trouble between the two brothers. So the two brothers, Al-Hadi, this is one, and he's the older one, and the other one is Harun. Harun is the younger brother, and at first Al-Mahdi, the Caliph, wants to have Al-Hadi inherit the throne. I mean, that's the intention. But then he sends Harun on a mission to fight Byzantium, the neighboring Christian country, and Harun does very well, and this is why he gets the title Harun Upright, the Harun Rashid. And his father changes his mind, and he now says, okay, it should be Harun who should inherit the throne. So of course Al-Hadi doesn't like it. Harun does something quite unexpected, and the rumor is that this is on the advice of Barmakid, that he recognizes his brother as the caliph, with the agreement that they sign that upon his death Harun would inherit the throne, not the son of Al-Hadi, but so that first brother would rule and then the second brother would rule. They don't honor that agreement. Basically, as soon as Al-Hadi becomes full power, gets full power, he broke his agreement. He imprisoned Yahya Barmakid, who is the advisor to Harun Rashid and will be his friend for many, many years to come. He imprisons him and proclaims his son to be the legitimate heir. So he basically broke the agreement. They broke the oath, and they actually swore that oath. For some unexplained reason, in 786, Al-Hadi dies. Nobody ever explained it. There's some rumors that his mother suffocated him, some rumors that he was killed. Who knows? I mean, these are all speculations. The fact that he dies and that Harun becomes caliph. Moreover, it's kind of legitimate from the totally legal point of view, because they did sign an agreement that if Al-Hadi dies, then Harun will become caliph. And so he dies, very conveniently. So, of course, there is a suspicion that it might have been engineered to promote Harun to power. Whatever it may be, Harun Rashid becomes caliph, and Yahya Barmakid his vizier. And this is the truly the greatest, some people say this is the greatest time of all time, both of the Islamic civilization and probably one of the most brilliant times in world history. This is the next 100 years that begin with Harun Rashid. Why is that? Because if you compare the world, if you look at the world, if you physically travel to Rome, to Constantinople, even to China, this was it. This was the place where you had the highest concentration of talent, of literature, science, beautiful cities, water irrigation, palaces, schools, hospitals. I mean, Baghdad was the place of civilization for the entire world. That was the moment of glory of the Islamic civilization that lasted for about 100 years. Now, this is also the time of 1001 Nights, and the story goes that it was actually Harun Rashid that had a lover, a woman, who told him stories every night. And you know, in the 1000th night, there's a story that says that there was a woman who was threatened that if she doesn't tell the story, she would be killed. That, I don't know if this is true or not, but it is a historical fact that there was a woman his lover, or maybe a slave, maybe a concubine, who did tell him stories every night, which actually made the background of the future world famous collection of 1001 Nights. So Harun loved stories, he loved literature, he loved listening to the stories, he loved poetry, he loved music. He had 7 wives plus concubines, he had 11 sons, he had 14 daughters, and he was the patron of arts. He absolutely spent money on surrounding himself with the brightest and greatest thinkers of the time. And that becomes a pattern, and this is why it's so important. If you think of a good Muslim ruler of the time, he is the one who surrounds himself with the brightest philosophers and poets and doctors and others. This becomes the court life. This becomes the pattern that would be repeated over and over again. So they say he was an Orthodox Muslim and was very strict about his understanding of Islam and did not tolerate any disagreements with him on this matter. And that he was also tolerant, but not as tolerant as some other Muslim caliphs were in regard to the Christians and Jews. He went to war several times against the Byzantine Empire, and the empress of the Byzantine Empire was a very famous empress, Irene. And he won, and he forced Irene to pay a tribute to Abbasid Empire every year. So in a sense, she becomes his vassal. I mean, in a sense, Abbasids become the most powerful state. He sends gifts to Charlemagne, which is the founder of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation in 800, and he sent gifts that was so amazing, that the water clock, they say, that Charlemagne was very impressed and didn't know how could people make such sophisticated things. Okay, his vizier is a very, very famous person in history, Yahya. He is his vice ruler. In a sense, he's his prime minister, but he basically has so much power that in a sense they're friends, and he trusts him completely. And this is the time when viziers acquire enormous powers, and it would continue this way in the future generations. Yahya was absolutely superior, talented administrator. He's efficient, he has order, he provides security, the borders, the army, the tax collection, the roads, the bridges, the canals. And this is, the modern term we use is good governance. Good governance is a service provided to your country that cannot be replaced. If you do not have good governance, then everything falls apart. And especially in a climate like in the Middle East, you absolutely need to maintain water supply, which means good irrigation, good system of communications and roads to promote trade, so that there is accumulation of wealth, so that you could collect the taxes, especially in such a huge empire that stretched from Morocco to India. So Yahya was up to the job. He did provide this kind of efficient, uncorruptible administration. However, he of course was extremely rich and built palaces for himself, and he probably thought that that is a reward for his services to the state. He, just as Harun, is the patron of arts and sciences, and it's truly so. Harun had no, it's okay. Yahya had 2 sons. So the first son's name is Al-Fadl, and the second son is Jafar or Jafar. And they were also very rich. They also had all kinds of positions in the government, and they built palaces for themselves as well. And they were also surrounding themselves with poets and philosophers. So it was like a pattern that everybody who was important, he would do the same. He would build palaces and invite poets and philosophers and doctors, and build museums, build libraries and hospitals. So then there is also testimony that Harun really loved Jafar. Now, what does it mean, really loved? Nobody knows. But the textbook Durand quotes that they had one big sweater made for themselves that they would put on and walk together, kind of like he would hug him all the time, that they would have one sweater with two openings for the head, and the rest of it would be one piece of clothing. In other words, there is some kind of a hint that Harun may have been gay, and that Jafar may have been his lover. From what happens later, it could mean that as an act of jealousy. In any case, a famous Arab historian, Ibn Khaldun, writes in his famous history that Harun got really angry at the Burma kids, at Jafar, and the reason is probably because Ibn Khaldun writes that they accumulated too much power, that they had too much control over finances and taxes and so forth, and their downfall would be explained by this. But there's another more dramatic and more poetic and dramatic and tragic explanation. So that has to do with Harun's sister. Her name is Abasa. So Abasa fell in love with Jafar. So Jafar is a young boy, and as you recall, he walked together with Harun in one sweater. So if we suppose that Harun was in love with Jafar in a kind of a gay relationship, he obviously wouldn't like that Abasa, his sister, fell in love with him as a woman, which is normal. So they declared, Abasa and Jafar, they declared openly to Harun that they want to get married. And he couldn't say no, because why not? I mean, she's a princess, she can choose. And this is not a nobody, I mean, this is the son of a prime minister. So he agreed, but on the condition that they should have no children. And they agreed that they would get married, but they would have no children. Now, some speculations, like Durand, he says that there was more than that, that the agreement is that they would only see each other in his presence, which would imply that they shouldn't sleep together. But in any case, they did, and Abasa had two sons that she gave birth to, and they secretly took them away to Medina in Arabia. And this is where they were growing up, the two sons of Abasa and Jafar. Well, one day Harun found out. The rumor is that it was his wife, Zubaydah, who told him. Whatever it may be, he found out, and he was furious. He was absolutely mad with fury. And the fact that he was so mad, why you should be so mad that your sister marries the son of the prime minister? What's the big deal? What is there to be mad about? It's not treason or anything like this. He was so mad. He was so upset. He ordered to seize Abasa and had her killed in front of him, executed. Then he ordered Jafar to be killed and to chop off his head and brought to him on a platter, which becomes a kind of a tradition in Arab history. Then he wasn't even satisfied with that. He sent for the two boys to Medina, and they were brought to him, and they say that they were very beautiful boys, and they were very well brought up, and they spoke poetry and all that stuff. He talked to them, he played with them, and then he ordered them killed as well. So that kind of a violent response shows to me that there perhaps may have been jealousy. involved in this violent end. All the property of Barmakis was confiscated, and this was the punishment for deceit. He basically, you could look at it this way: either it was a punishment too excessive for what they did, or it would make more sense to explain it as an act of jealousy and rage after he lost his lover. Okay, we'll stop at that and then we'll continue with Mamun next time.